The Grand Hall of the Galaxy Council shimmered with blue light as delegates from 50 different worlds took their seats. It was supposed to be a normal day. Another meeting, another set of negotiations, another chance to show how peaceful the galaxy had become. But something felt strange that morning. The energy in the air was heavier than usual, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. The chair of the council, an old being named Avalor, raised his voice. "Today's session concerns Earth," he announced. The word Earth echoed around the hall. Everyone knew who the humans were. They were newcomers, the youngest member species of the council, but also the most unpredictable. In just a few decades, humans had gone from being confined to their small planet to building ships that could cross galaxies. They were curious, ambitious, and sometimes reckless. But no one could deny their courage. Avalor continued. "We received a message from Earth early this morning. Their ambassador has declined to attend today's diplomatic summit." The hall went silent. Dozens of glowing eyes, scaled faces, and shimmering bodies turned toward the chair. Declined? That word had never been used before. Every member world was required to attend when called by the council. It was a matter of unity, a matter of peace. A small delegate from the Vexine species leaned forward. "Perhaps there is a mistake," she said, her voice trembling. "Humans don't usually refuse communication." But Avalor shook his head. "We have checked the transmission multiple times. It is genuine." He pressed a button and a hologram appeared above the center table. A human figure stood there, their face calm, their voice steady. "Earth will not negotiate," the message said. "We will not take part in any diplomatic exchange. All contact from the council will be denied until further notice." And then the hologram faded into static. For several moments, no one spoke. You could hear the faint hum of the translation systems and the rustling of wings from a creature in the corner. Then all at once, the hall erupted into noise. Voices rose in confusion and disbelief. "This is an insult to the council. Have the humans gone mad? They think they can survive alone? Something must have happened. This isn't like them." Avalor tried to calm them down, but the delegates were too shocked. The humans had always been difficult to predict, bold, emotional, and sometimes too proud for their own good. But this was different. This was a message of complete separation. It wasn't anger. It wasn't rebellion. It sounded like a final decision. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the news spread faster than light. On distant planets, leaders gathered their people to discuss what it meant. On trading routes, pilots whispered rumors. Some said the humans had discovered something terrible. Others believed they were preparing for war. Every theory was more frightening than the last. Inside the council's private chamber, the most powerful members gathered for an emergency meeting. The room was dim, with a round table made of dark glass that reflected their anxious faces. Avalor sat at the head of the table, his mind racing. He had seen many strange things in his long life, but this was beyond understanding. "They cannot just refuse us," said one of the elder delegates, slamming his hand on the table. "We brought them into the council. We gave them access to knowledge, technology, trade. And now they turn their backs on us?" Another delegate, a calm and observant being from the Oran system, spoke softly. "Maybe they are afraid. Humans act on emotion more than logic. Perhaps something has happened on their world." Avalor considered this. It was true. Humans were emotional, but they were not foolish. Their refusal didn't feel like fear. It felt deliberate, as if there was a reason behind their silence. Still, he couldn't ignore the danger. If one species openly defied the council, others might follow. That would mean the end of galactic unity, and possibly the beginning of chaos. Hours passed as the council debated. Some wanted to send fleets toward Earth to force a response. Others begged for patience, hoping humans would explain themselves. In the end, Avalor decided to give them time. "We will send one more message," he said. "A message of peace, not pressure." The council's communication team prepared the transmission. The message was simple. "To our friends on Earth, the council wishes for continued understanding and cooperation. Please respond so that we may resolve this misunderstanding peacefully." The signal was sent through every known channel. They waited. Minutes turned to hours. Hours turned into days. No reply came. Across the stars, humans remained silent. Soon reports began to appear, strange ones. A merchant ship passing near the edge of human space had detected an unknown energy field surrounding their system. A scout probe sent to investigate disappeared without a trace. The council dismissed it as coincidence at first, but deep down, the unease grew. What if the humans were blocking all outside contact intentionally? What if they had isolated themselves completely? Weeks went by. The galaxy started to change. Trade routes connected to Earth were shut down. Planets that once worked closely with human scientists now received no updates. Human-built satellites and beacons went dark one by one. It was as if Earth had pulled a curtain over itself and vanished. Avalor found himself staring out the window of his chamber late one night, watching the soft glow of distant stars. He had seen many species rise and fall, but humans were different. They had a fire inside them, a determination that refused to die. Why would such a species turn away from everything? His assistant entered quietly. "Chair, there is concern among the colonies," she said. "Many believe the humans are preparing for war." Avalor frowned. "Do they have proof?" "No," she said softly. "Just fear," he sighed. "Fear spreads faster than truth." But deep down, even Avalor couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He thought about the message again, those simple words, so calm, so final. "We will not negotiate." It didn't sound like anger. It sounded like a warning. Across the galaxy, others were beginning to think the same. In secret corners of the Council's network, intelligence officers whispered about human activities beyond known space. Hidden colonies, experimental stations. The humans had always been restless explorers, but what were they building out there, and why in secret? The Council called for another meeting, this time closed to the public. Only the most trusted members attended. The air was thick with tension. "We cannot allow this silence to continue," one delegate said. "If humans have turned against us, they could be a threat." "They're not fools," another replied. "If they wanted war, they would have started it by now." "Then what do they want?" someone else asked. That was the question no one could answer. Finally, Avalor spoke. "We will send a small team," he said. "No weapons, no threat, only observers. They will go to the edge of human space and report what they find." The room agreed. It was their only option. A week later, a small scout vessel named Eterna departed from Celestera Prime. It was a quiet ship, designed for research and stealth, crewed by 5 beings from different worlds. They were brave and they believed they could find the truth, but Eterna never returned. No distress call, no trace. It was as if it had been erased from existence. When the Council received the report, the hall fell silent again. The loss of a ship was not unusual in deep space, but losing all data, all signals without a single clue? That was something else entirely. The panic began to spread. Planets near human space started closing their borders. Civilian ships were warned to stay away. Rumors turned into fear, and fear turned into anger. The media across the galaxy began to question whether humanity had discovered something too dangerous to share. Back on Celestera Prime, Avalor sat alone in his chamber once more, the weight of the galaxy pressing on his shoulders. He had seen wars. He had seen betrayals. But this silence from Earth was something different. It wasn't aggression, it was isolation. And isolation from humans, he feared, could only mean one thing. They had found something so powerful, or so terrifying that they believed no one else should know. He looked out at the stars again, whispering quietly to himself, "What are you hiding, humans? And what are you protecting us from?" The galaxy waited in silence, not realizing that this was only the beginning, that soon the truth about humanity's refusal would shake every corner of the universe. The following weeks after Earth's refusal were full of chaos across the galaxy. What had once been a peaceful union of civilizations was now filled with fear, doubt, and endless questions. Every council member wanted answers, but none were coming. Humanity had gone completely silent. Their outposts stopped responding. Their ships no longer appeared on radar. Even their automated beacons, which usually sent navigation signals to other travelers, had all shut down. In the Galaxy Council's central hall, the tension grew heavier with each passing day. The delegates gathered again and again, arguing for hours, trying to guess what humans were planning. "They have cut off all communication," shouted one representative, his voice echoing through the chamber. "No race in history has ever done this. They are hiding something." "Or maybe," another said quietly, "they're protecting something." The room fell silent for a moment. Protecting? That word hit differently. Humans were known for many things: bravery, stubbornness, curiosity. But above all, they had an instinct to protect, even when it cost them dearly. Still, most of the council didn't believe that theory. To them, Earth's silence felt like betrayal. The humans had been given technology, trade access, and the trust of the entire galactic community. And now they had turned their backs. The media from different planets started spreading rumors. Some claimed Earth was building a secret army. Others said the humans had found a new power source, one that could make them unstoppable. And there were even wild stories that humans had made contact with an ancient species that existed before the council itself. In every marketplace and spaceport, people whispered. Merchants avoided trading in human goods. Some planets banned Earth symbols. Fear was spreading faster than facts. Meanwhile, on Celestera Prime, the council's communication center worked day and night. Hundreds of technicians tried to decode any possible human signal. The network was filled with fragments of static, broken transmissions, and echoes of old messages. Every small sound made the staff hopeful. Maybe it was from Earth. Maybe they finally wanted to talk again, but every time, it turned out to be nothing. Late one night, while most of the center was quiet, a young technician noticed something strange on his screen. A faint rhythmic pattern was hidden deep inside the static of an old human channel. It didn't look natural. He zoomed in, analyzed the sequence, and realized it wasn't noise. It was a code. He ran the sequence through several translation systems, each one peeling back a layer of meaning until finally, a single line of text appeared. Do not reach Earth. We are not who you think we are. The technician froze. His heart pounded. It wasn't a warning to fight. It sounded like a plea, or maybe a confession. He immediately sent the message to the council's intelligence department. Within hours, it reached Avalor himself. The next morning, the entire council gathered again. The message was displayed in the center of the hall, glowing softly in white light. Everyone stared at it, unsure what to say. What does it mean? Asked one delegate nervously. It sounds like a threat, said another. No, Avalor replied, his tone calm but serious. It sounds like a warning. The discussion went on for hours. Some believed the humans had been replaced or taken over by something else. Others thought they had created technology beyond their own control. Whatever it was clear that the humans didn't want anyone near their planet, not even allies. Still, not everyone was ready to give up. A few council members argued that the message could be a misunderstanding, or maybe an old recording. But deep down, most of them felt something was very wrong. The council decided to send a small drone fleet toward Earth's border, not to invade, but to observe from a distance. The drones were tiny and fast, equipped with long-range scanners. They were designed to go unnoticed, but only half of them returned. The ones that came back had no video data. Just darkness. Their sensors were fried. Their navigation logs were full of errors. The few images they recovered showed strange energy patterns in space, bright shifting waves that looked almost alive. The scientists who studied the data couldn't explain it. The energy didn't match any known source. It wasn't radiation, plasma, or gravitational distortion. It was something new, something that seemed to react when scanned. When Avalor heard the report, he knew things were getting serious. If humans truly discovered something dangerous, he said quietly, maybe they cut off contact to keep it from spreading. No one wanted to believe that. But it made sense. Humans had a history of facing disasters head-on, even if it meant isolating themselves. Perhaps they were doing it again, only this time on a galactic scale. Still, fear began to outweigh reason. Across the galaxy, worlds that once trusted Earth now started arming themselves. Military fleets increased patrols near their borders. News outlets used frightening headlines. Is humanity preparing for war? And Earth's silence could mean invasion. And yet no ships came. No threats were made. Earth remained quiet. Completely and utterly quiet. Back in the council's capital, Avalor called for another private meeting with the senior leaders. The room was dimly lit, the mood tense. Everyone looked tired and uncertain. We can't wait forever, said one of the senior generals. If they have found something dangerous, it could already be spreading. We need to know what's happening. Avalor shook his head. Sending more ships could make things worse. Whatever is happening on Earth, they clearly don't want us there. Or they don't want us to know, someone muttered. The argument continued for hours. No one agreed on a plan. Half wanted to send a fleet to investigate. The other half feared that doing so could start a war. Finally, Avalor stood up. "We will wait," he said firmly, "until we understand what this message means. If the humans are warning us, we must listen and not react." But waiting didn't stop the fear. On several border planets, small protests began. Civilians demanded to know why the Council was protecting Earth instead of confronting them. Some called humans traitors. Others begged the Council to cut ties completely. Inside the Council, a quiet split was forming. The old trust between species was beginning to fade. Some races believed Avalor was hiding something. They thought he knew more about the humans than he was saying. And then one night another signal appeared. It was faint, buried deep in the cosmic background noise. The transmission lasted only a few seconds before vanishing, but it carried a fragment of an image. A human research station floating near a red dwarf star. The structure looked abandoned, its lights dead, its walls cracked and burned. No life signs were detected. The image shook the Council. It was their first visual contact with human territory in months, and it wasn't what they hoped for. The silence was no longer just political, and it was physical. Something terrible had happened. When the scientists enhanced the image, they noticed something strange on the side of the station. A dark mark, almost like a shadow, that didn't match any known pattern. The mark looked as if space itself had been torn open. The analysis team concluded that it was a form of energy burn, but unlike anything seen before. The area around the mark bent light unnaturally, as if gravity had twisted there. Avalor listened to the report carefully. He said nothing for a long time. Then quietly he asked, "What if that is what they were warning us about?" No one answered. That night the galaxy slept uneasily. Even planets far from Earth felt the tension. For the first time in centuries, the Council's unity began to shake. The human silence was no longer just strange. It was terrifying. On the far side of the galaxy, a few explorers claimed to have seen ghost signals, old human distress calls repeating through empty space. But whenever ships went to investigate, they found nothing. Only silence. Everywhere, people began to realize that something had changed forever. Humanity, once the bold explorers of the stars, had become a mystery that frightened even the oldest civilizations. And in the deep void, somewhere beyond the edge of known space, a faint signal blinked once again. A single human voice, cracked and tired, whispered into the static, "Stay away, please." Then it was gone. The message never reached the Council, but if it had, maybe things would have been different. Maybe someone would have understood that the humans weren't being defiant. They were desperate. But at that time, no one knew. All the Council could see was silence. All they could feel was fear. And fear in any galaxy always leads to mistakes. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, but Earth remained silent. The Galaxy Council was now in a state of complete confusion. Every attempt to contact the humans failed. The once busy channels that carried human communication were now filled with empty static. The whole galaxy was starting to feel uneasy, not just the leaders, but the ordinary people too. On many planets, humans had once been known as explorers and problem solvers. They had helped other civilizations with medicine, technology, and trade. They had worked alongside alien scientists, engineers, and builders. But now all that trust was fading away. Every day new rumors appeared, darker, wilder, and more frightening than before. Some said the humans had built a secret weapon. Others claimed that Earth had fallen under control of some unknown force. There were even stories that the humans were no longer human, that something had changed them. No one could prove any of it, but fear didn't need proof. Fear only needed silence. Inside the grand chamber of the Council, the delegates met once again. The air was heavy. No one wanted to be the first to speak. Then one of them finally said, "We can't just sit here. We need answers." Avalor, who had been listening quietly, nodded slowly. "I agree," he said. "But we must be careful. We already lost a ship near human space. We don't know what's out there." "But doing nothing will only make things worse," another replied. "If the humans are in danger, we must know. If they've turned hostile, we must prepare." The discussion went on for hours, looping between fear and reason. No one had any clear proof of danger, just fragments of data and an old warning. Do not reach Earth. We are not who you think we are. That single message played again and again in Avalor's mind. He couldn't ignore it. Something about the tone of it, calm but serious, told him it wasn't written by an enemy. It was written by someone trying to protect others. Late one night, Avalor went to the communication archives, a quiet hall full of old transmissions stored in holographic crystals. He asked the system to replay the human message one more time. The glowing figure of a human appeared, standing tall, their face almost expressionless. "Do not reach Earth. We are not who you think we are." Avalor stared at the image for a long time. He paused the playback and zoomed in on the background. Behind the human figure, faint lights flickered, not from equipment but from outside a window. It looked like moving energy waves, alive and shifting as if space itself was breathing. He leaned forward. "What are you hiding, humans?" he whispered. The next morning, a council intelligence team began analyzing the background of that old transmission. When they enhanced the image, they discovered strange distortions, almost like gravity ripples, but with a pattern no one had ever seen before. It was the same energy signature that had destroyed the last probe. That meant one thing. Whatever was behind the human silence, it wasn't political. It was something far beyond that. The council tried sending unmanned drones again, but they vanished the moment they crossed the invisible border around Earth's system. The few fragments that returned showed flickering shapes, were almost like shadows made of light, moving across space. The readings made no sense. The shadows didn't absorb light, they bent it. It was as if reality itself twisted when they passed. Some scientists said it was just an optical illusion. Others whispered that maybe these weren't natural at all. Maybe they were alive. The more the council investigated, the more they felt that humanity had stumbled upon something no one else had ever encountered. In a private meeting, a few council leaders confronted Avalor. "You've seen the data," one of them said. "Something dangerous is happening around Earth. We must act before it spreads." "And do what?" Avalor asked quietly. "Attack them? Send fleets into the unknown? That would be suicide. We can't just stand by," another argued. "If this reaches our worlds, millions could die." Avalor looked around the table. "You speak as if the humans caused this. What if they're fighting it? What if this is their way of protecting us?" The room went silent. It wasn't an easy thought to accept. For centuries, the council had seen itself as the guardian of peace. The idea that a younger race, the humans, might now be the ones protecting them was almost impossible to imagine. But deep down, Avalor felt that was exactly what was happening. Meanwhile, in secret, the Council's research division discovered more hidden patterns inside the human transmissions. Most were corrupted, unreadable, but one fragment contained a short audio clip, a human voice whispering through static, "If you hear this, don't come for us. It's not safe anymore." The tone of the voice was tired but not fearful, as if the person speaking had already accepted something terrible. That small piece of audio changed everything for Avalor. It was clear now that the humans hadn't turned hostile. They were facing something they didn't want to spread, and if they were right, then the Council's curiosity could doom them all. Still, not everyone in the Council agreed. Some members accused Avalor of hiding the truth. They believed he was protecting humans out of bias. "They've gone rogue," one leader said. "You're letting emotion blind you." But Avalor stayed firm. "Sometimes," he replied softly, "emotion is the only thing that keeps us from making mistakes." The argument split the council. Some worlds started to prepare for conflict, building defense grids and closing their borders. Others began forming secret alliances, unsure who to trust anymore. Across the galaxy, the silence of Earth was changing everything. The great peace that had lasted for centuries was slowly cracking. Then one day, without warning, a faint signal appeared in the Council's monitoring system. It came from near Earth's border, a repeating pulse like a distress beacon. The Council immediately redirected all scanners toward it. The signal was weak but real. When they finally decoded it, they were stunned. It wasn't a distress call. It was a data stream, a collection of human research logs. The logs described an experiment humans had conducted several years ago, a study on a strange energy anomaly found beyond Pluto. The energy seemed harmless at first, but then it started to grow, feeding on radiation and matter. It wasn't like any known energy. It behaved like it was alive. The logs ended abruptly. The last entry read, "It's adapting. It learns from us. If this reaches the outer colonies, everything will change. We are sealing the system. No one must enter. No one, that was it. The message stopped there. When the council finished reading the logs, a cold silence filled the chamber. So that was it. The humans weren't isolating themselves out of arrogance, no, they were quarantining their own world. They had found something dangerous, something that couldn't be fought with ships or weapons. They're trying to contain it, Avalor said quietly. All this time they were protecting us. The truth left everyone speechless. Some delegates lowered their heads in shame. Others refused to believe it. If that's true, one said, then why didn't they ask for help? Maybe, Avalor replied, they knew we couldn't help. Maybe they knew it was already too late. The council's scientists immediately began running simulations. If that energy, whatever it was, once spread beyond human space, it could reach the core worlds in a matter of years. But so far it hadn't moved. The humans had managed to keep it contained. The council finally understood the meaning of that first message. Do not reach Earth. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning and a plea, but the truth didn't calm the galaxy. News of the energy entity spread fast and fear turned to panic. Civilizations began accusing each other of hiding similar dangers. Trade routes collapsed. Old rivalries reignited, and through it all, Earth remained silent, locked behind a wall of mysterious energy, fighting a battle no one else could see. Avalor stood alone in the observation tower, staring out at the stars. He wondered if the humans were still alive, or if they had already been lost to the very thing they tried to stop. But then he remembered the voice from the recording, calm, strong, and full of determination. If you hear this, don't come for us. He closed his eyes and whispered, You saved us, even when we didn't deserve it. The galaxy went on spinning in silence, unaware that far beyond the council's reach, humanity was still standing, not as conquerors, but as guardians of everyone else's survival, and deep in the darkness near Earth, unseen by any telescope, a faint human signal blinked once more. Not a warning this time, but a promise, we will hold the line. The discovery of the human research logs changed everything. For the first time, the Galaxy Council understood that humanity's silence was not an act of rebellion, but an act of sacrifice. They had found something alive, something powerful, and had locked themselves away to keep everyone else safe. But knowing the truth didn't bring peace. In fact, it brought more fear. The logs had only explained what happened, not what that thing was. The unknown always scared people more than war ever could. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. Every broadcast, every transmission, every news screen carried the same headline. Earth found containing a dangerous entity, Council on alert. Worlds that once traded freely with Earth now shut down all contact. Colonies that had human scientists or workers demanded their evacuation, afraid they might bring something back with them. And slowly, the trust that had taken centuries to build between species began to crumble. Inside the great council hall, the air felt heavier than ever. Every representative wore the same expression, a mix of confusion, fear, and guilt. Some still refused to believe the humans' intentions were noble. They could be lying, one of them said, his voice sharp. Maybe they created this thing and now they're pretending to be heroes. Another slammed his hand on the table. You think they would sacrifice their whole world just to fool us? The humans may be reckless, but they've never been heartless. The argument went back and forth louder each time, but Avalor stayed quiet watching them fight. He could feel something deeper, something that wasn't just fear of the humans, but fear of what humanity represented. Humans had always been different. They never accepted limits. They always pushed boundaries, and now, that same nature had led them to something the rest of the galaxy wasn't ready for. When the room finally quieted down, Avalor stood. Enough, he said calmly. This is not the time to fight among ourselves. The humans are facing something alone that could threaten us all. We owe them respect, not judgment. The hall fell silent again. Some looked ashamed, others simply avoided his eyes. But Avalor knew. Fear changes even the strongest hearts. That night, the council sent a new message toward Earth's border. It wasn't an order, it wasn't a threat. It was a simple plea. To the people of Earth, and if you can hear this, please respond. We wish to understand what you are facing. We want to help. They waited. Hours passed. Then days. Finally, a signal came back. It wasn't a full message, just a short transmission, broken and full of interference. But the few words that came through froze everyone in the council. Stay where you are. We can't hold it much longer. And then silence. Those words shook the entire galaxy. If the humans were struggling to hold it, that meant the danger wasn't contained anymore. Whatever they were fighting, it was breaking free. In panic, the Council ordered all ships to retreat from the outer human zone. Defense systems were activated across nearby colonies. Fleets that hadn't been used in centuries suddenly took flight again. The galaxy had lived in peace for generations. Now it was preparing for survival. But Avalor wasn't satisfied with running away. He couldn't stand the idea of leaving the humans alone to fight something the rest of them didn't even understand. He gathered a small group of trusted advisors. "I want to know what's happening there," he said firmly. "We owe it to them. If they fall, we'll be next." One of his advisors looked nervous. "Chair, you saw what happened to the last probe. The closer we get to Earth, the stranger space becomes. Ships disappear without a trace. Sensors stop working. Whatever that energy is, it doesn't like being watched." "I know," Avalor said quietly, "but we can't just wait here while they fight for all of us." After a long silence, the team agreed to send one more unmanned vessel, this time shielded with the most advanced energy barriers the Council had. They called it the Lumen. It wasn't meant to cross into Earth's orbit, only to observe from a safe distance and collect data. When the ship reached the border of human space, the first few hours went smoothly. The energy readings were high but stable. The crew on Celestara Prime monitoring the mission finally began to relax, until the Lumen sent one last video feed. The image showed the edge of a bright blue wave spreading across space like a living mist. Inside it, glowing fragments moved, shapes that looked like faces but constantly changing like light trapped in water. Then the ship's systems began to fail. The last thing they saw was a massive burst of light, and then the feed went dark. The Lumen was gone. When the scientists analyzed the final data, they discovered something even stranger. The energy wave seemed to respond to the ship's presence. It didn't just destroy the probe. It adapted, mimicking its signals before swallowing it completely. It was learning. That realization terrified everyone. Whatever the humans were fighting wasn't a creature or a weapon. It was something far more dangerous, something alive, aware, and intelligent. The Council's scientists now believed that humanity's entire solar system was wrapped inside a containment field they had built to keep the entity trapped. But if that field broke, the entire galaxy would be at risk. Back on Celestara Prime, the Council called for an emergency session, the most critical one in history. Hundreds of holographic seats filled the chamber as every world tuned in. Avalor stood at the center, the message from Earth playing in the background. "We can't hold it much longer." "This is not only their fight," Avalor said, his voice echoing across the hall. "Humanity may have acted alone, but they did it for all of us. They refused diplomacy because they knew words would slow them down. They sacrificed connection, reputation, and peace just to buy us time. If they fall, so do we." The hall was silent. Many delegates looked down, unable to speak. Some even had tears in their eyes. For the first time, the galaxy realized what the humans had truly done. Still, not everyone agreed. One delegate from the eastern colonies stood up. "You're asking us to help them, but we don't even know what we're fighting. We could be walking into our own destruction." Avalor looked at him firmly. "Or we could be walking into history." That sentence stayed with everyone in the room. After hours of discussion, the Council reached a painful decision. They couldn't directly approach Earth without risking the spread of the entity, but they could send resources, data, and support from a distance. Special signal beacons were placed around the human border, transmitting information that could help strengthen their containment field. The Council didn't know if the humans could even receive it, but it was the least they could do. Weeks passed again. The galaxy waited anxiously, watching the edge of human space for any change. Then one night something happened. The energy field around Earth flared brighter than ever before. A burst of light so strong that it was seen from neighboring systems. Every scanner across the galaxy picked it up. For a moment everyone thought it was over, that the containment had failed, but then slowly the light faded. The reading stabilized, the field held, and a small signal appeared in the Council's receiver, a single encrypted human transmission. It took hours to decode, but when they finally managed to play it, one short message appeared on the screen. "Hold your line. We are holding ours," that was all. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Across the galaxy, hope began to grow again. The humans were still fighting, still alive, still protecting everyone else. Avalor stood by the window of the council tower, looking out at the stars. For the first time in months, he felt a strange sense of peace. Humanity's silence now made sense. They weren't rejecting the galaxy, they were saving it. He whispered softly, almost to himself. You never stopped being human. Even when the galaxy stopped believing in you. The council voted to officially close off human space forever, marking it as a forbidden zone. But deep down, everyone knew that zone wasn't a prison. It was a shield. And beyond that invisible wall, somewhere inside the silent darkness, the humans kept their promise, standing guard against the unknown, unseen and unimaginable. No one could say how long they would last. Maybe years, maybe centuries. But one thing was certain. The day the humans fell, the rest of the galaxy would follow, so they waited. And they hoped, because sometimes the loudest form of courage is silence. For many months, the galaxy lived in an uneasy peace. Every world kept watching the edge of human space, waiting for a sign, either of safety or of disaster. The stars beyond the human border seemed the same, yet everyone knew something powerful and unpredictable still stirred within them. On Celestara Prime, Avalor rarely slept. Each night he would stand by the wide glass window of the council tower, staring at the cluster of stars where Earth lay hidden. He had grown older since the first incident, and the lines on his face showed the weight of too many unanswered questions. There were moments when the galaxy almost forgot about the humans. Trade routes reopened, new colonies were built, and the younger generation began to treat the Earth silence as nothing more than an old mystery. But for Avalor, it was never forgotten. Then one morning, everything changed again. A small cargo vessel traveling near the restricted border detected strange energy readings. The captain of the vessel sent a quick report before his systems began to flicker. He described seeing lights, not random energy flares, but organized patterns moving like signals. The lights formed lines and symbols that looked almost like writing. The report ended abruptly. The ship disappeared soon after. When the council received the data, they were stunned. The pattern wasn't random, it was language, a code. And when decoded, it translated into something no one expected. We are still here, but time is running out. The message shook Avalor to his core. The humans were still alive, still fighting whatever horror they had trapped. But if time was running out, it meant that the threat had grown stronger, or that humanity's power was fading. An emergency council meeting was called that same day. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy appeared on the massive holographic screens. The mood was tense, the air heavy with fear and curiosity. Avalor stood in the center and began to speak. For years, we believed the humans sealed themselves off to protect us. We respected that. But now they've reached out again, and this time they're asking for help. A voice cut through the silence. Or it's a trap, said one delegate from the industrial systems. What if that message isn't from them at all? What if the thing they trapped is speaking through them? The hall erupted into noise again. Some agreed, others argued. Old fears returned like ghosts. The galaxy had seen too much war in the past. Trust was a rare currency now. Finally, Avalor raised his voice. We cannot ignore them. If there's even a small chance humanity is still fighting for us, then we owe it to them to answer. A quiet voice spoke from the back of the room. It was the youngest delegate, from one of the frontier worlds. Chair Avalor, she said softly. If the humans say time is running out, what happens when it runs out? The question hung in the air. No one answered, because everyone feared they already knew. The council decided to send a deep space observation probe once again, this time equipped with no communication systems, only recorders. Its job was simple, to watch and return. The launch was quiet, almost secret. No public broadcast, no grand announcement. The ship slipped into the blackness of space like a shadow disappearing into the night. Days passed. Then weeks. Finally, the probe returned, damaged but intact. Its data logs were partially corrupted, yet the images it carried made every scientist in the council lab go pale. The recordings showed Earth's solar system, but it was barely recognizable. The planets glowed faintly, wrapped in a shimmering energy web. Streams of light moved between them like veins pulsing with rhythm. It looked alive. And then came the final image, a massive wave of golden light, expanding from Earth's orbit, burning brighter than any sun, and then collapsing inward, as if being pulled back by something invisible. The scientists slowed the footage. In the brief moment before the wave collapsed, one could see shadows within the light, not shapes of monsters but outlines of people. Thousands, maybe millions, standing together. It was as if the humans themselves had become part of the containment field. The room was silent. The scientists didn't know what to feel. Horror, awe, sadness. Maybe all at once. When Avalor saw the footage, his heart ached. "They became the shield," he whispered. "They didn't just build it. They became it." He called for a full council session the next day. He wanted everyone, every world, every leader to see what he had seen. When the footage played in the grand chamber, the reaction was beyond words. Some cried. Some sat frozen. Others covered their faces, unable to look. For so long, the galaxy had believed humans were arrogant and selfish, too proud to join diplomacy, too stubborn to follow rules. But the truth was the opposite. They had given up everything, even their own existence, to protect everyone else. After the session, no one spoke for a long time. The sound of the empty chamber echoed like a sigh through the air. Finally, one of the delegates asked quietly, "If they became the shield, what happens when that shield breaks?" No one answered. That night, Avalor couldn't rest. He sat alone in his office watching the stars again. The message replayed in his mind. "We are still here, but time is running out." He turned to the communication console. Maybe it was reckless, maybe it was useless, but he felt he had to try. He recorded a message, not as a council chair, but as a man who simply cared. He said softly, "To whoever is listening on Earth, if you can hear me, please know we are trying to understand. We are proud of you. You are not forgotten." He sent it into the void, knowing it might never reach them, but somehow it made him feel lighter. A few days later, the council's sensors detected a faint echo, not a message, not even a full signal, just a whisper of energy bouncing back through space. When translated, it carried a single word: "Thank you." That was the last message humanity ever sent. Years went by. The galaxy continued to function, but something had changed forever. There were no more jokes about humans, no more careless comments. Every school taught about their sacrifice. Every planet held an annual moment of silence in their honor. Yet something deeper happened too. The unity that humans had always dreamed of, the unity they could never achieve through diplomacy, finally happened after their disappearance. The galaxy, once divided by politics and power, had become one in respect and memory. It was humanity's final gift. Avalor lived long enough to see the next generation of leaders take his place. Before he stepped down, he ordered that a new observatory be built facing the human border. It was called the Light of Earth. It wasn't a weapon or a station, just a reminder. Every night, its massive dome rotated toward the stars, sending a quiet beam of light into the darkness. Not as a call for help, but as a gesture of remembrance. Even now, no one knew what had really happened inside the human zone. Some believed the humans had merged with the energy to control it forever. Others thought they had transcended into something beyond understanding. But one thing was certain: they had not disappeared in vain. Centuries later, travelers passing near the restricted area still report strange sights, glowing lights, voices like distant whispers, and sometimes faint human-like figures moving in the void. Most scientists dismiss it as imagination or radiation interference, but a few, like Avalor once did, still believe. They believe that the humans are still there, holding the line, just as they promised, and maybe someday, when the galaxy is truly ready, that golden light will shine again, not as a warning, but as a greeting. Until then, the stars remain silent. But somewhere beyond that silence, humanity still watches, because that's what they always did best, not conquering, not ruling, but protecting, even when no one believed in them anymore. Even when the whole galaxy turned its back, they kept their promise. Generations had passed since the humans had vanished behind their silent border. The galaxy had changed in many ways, yet one truth still lived in the heart of every civilization: that humanity's sacrifice had saved them all. The story of Earth was no longer just a memory. It had become legend. Children grew up hearing it before bed. Elders told it during festivals, and artists painted glowing portraits of the blue planet that had once been home to the bravest species in history. But even as time moved on, the mystery never faded. The observatory called the Light of Earth still stood at the edge of the human border. It had become a symbol of hope and respect. Each year, thousands of visitors came to see the faint shimmer of energy that surrounded the human zone, the same invisible barrier that once trapped an ancient danger in the people who gave their lives to contain it. Avalor's name was now remembered among the great leaders of history. His final message, "They didn't vanish, they became the shield," was engraved on a golden wall near the observatory's main entrance. People often left flowers, crystals, or even small lights there as tribute. But despite the peace that humans had left behind, unease still lingered. Strange signals occasionally pulsed from within the forbidden zone. The council's scientists said it was just radiation from the containment field, but some believed it was something else. Whispers, echoes, messages. One night, during a quiet shift at the observatory, a young researcher sat alone by the scanner panel. The galaxy around her was silent except for the soft hum of the machines. Her eyes were tired, but her heart was awake. She had grown up hearing stories about humans, about how they stood against the unknown when everyone else was afraid. Suddenly, one of the monitors flickered. A faint pulse appeared, rhythmic, repeating. She leaned closer. It wasn't random static. It was deliberate. The signal repeated 3 times, paused, and then repeated again. It was a pattern she recognized, not alien, not machine. It was the same old signal used by humans before they vanished. Her hands trembled as she recorded the data. She sent the transmission to the central lab, her heart pounding. For a few minutes, she just sat there staring into the quiet darkness beyond the glass wall. Then she whispered softly to herself, "Are you still there?" The next day, the council gathered to analyze the signal. It was faint, buried under layers of energy distortion, but when decoded, it revealed a series of words that made the entire room fall silent. "Hold steady. Containment stable. We remain," gasps filled the chamber. Some refused to believe it. "It's impossible," one said. "They've been gone for centuries." But others, especially the older ones, felt tears in their eyes. Humanity hadn't died. They hadn't been destroyed. They were still there, holding the line just like they promised. The council immediately decided to send a message back, carefully so as not to disturb the containment field. The message was short and simple. "You are not forgotten." There was no response. For days they waited, hoping to see another signal, but none came. Still, the galaxy changed after that. The small flicker of contact reignited something that had been missing for generations: courage, hope, unity. The following months were filled with discussions and projects inspired by the message. The council began a new mission called Project Dawnlight, a collaboration between every major civilization to study energy containment, defense technology, and ways to preserve life even in impossible conditions. Every species contributed something: knowledge, resources, technology, and for the first time in history, the galaxy worked together without politics or greed. They said it was in honor of the humans. At the same time, the galaxy's culture began to shift. Artists started creating new forms of music and painting that celebrated humanity's spirit, their defiance, their compassion, their endless curiosity. Many people began to follow the human way, a philosophy that focused on courage, selflessness, and hope in the face of the unknown. The galaxy, once divided by fear, now found strength in the memory of those who refused to surrender. Years passed again. The human border remained closed, glowing faintly like a distant sunrise that never moved. Ships were forbidden to go near it, but the observatory always faced it, like a guardian watching the sleeping hero it once knew. One evening, as the sun of Celestara Prime dipped below the horizon, the observatory's main light beam flickered. It was a beautiful sight, the beam stretching into the void, reaching for the stars. But this time, something different happened. The light bounced back. It wasn't strong, just a faint reflection, almost invisible, but enough for the scanners to detect it. It wasn't random either. It was the same rhythm as before. 3 short pulses. Pause. 3 again. the pattern of hope. The staff at the observatory began to cheer. They sent the data to the council immediately. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The human signal has returned. People gathered in streets and homes and temples watching the night sky. The border glowed brighter than ever before, and for the first time, they saw shapes within the light, outlines of continents, faint shadows that looked like cities. For a moment, it was as if Earth itself was reaching out again, and then just as quickly as it came, the light dimmed. The signal faded, but the galaxy didn't feel sadness this time. They felt peace. It was as if humanity had whispered to them once more, "We're still here." In the following years, the galaxy grew stronger, united. The once feared council became a symbol of fairness and hope. No world was left isolated, no voice ignored, and at the center of it all was the story of Earth, the small blue world that had once stood alone, and through its silence had taught the universe how to listen. Every year, on the anniversary of the Great Containment, the council would hold a remembrance ceremony at the light of Earth. The galaxy's leaders would stand before the shining barrier and speak the same words together. "We hold steady. You remain." No one knew if the humans could hear them, but that didn't matter. The ritual wasn't just for them. It was for everyone who had ever felt small but still stood against something greater. The galaxy moved forward, wiser and stronger. But deep within every heart, there was always a quiet wish that one day the border would open again. Not because the danger had ended, but because the humans had won. And maybe one day, they would step out of that golden light once more, smiling, exhausted, but victorious, to see the galaxy they had saved. Until then, the legend lived on, somewhere beyond the silence. Past the glow of the barrier, humanity stood watch. They had become the unseen guardians of the stars, the quiet protectors of every world that once doubted them. Their voices were no longer heard, but their presence was everywhere. In every act of bravery, every spark of compassion, every decision to stand for something greater than fear, because the truth was simple: humanity had never truly disappeared. They had just evolved beyond what anyone could imagine. And in the stillness of the endless galaxy, the faint hum of their promise still echoed. "Hold steady. We remain." The stars glimmered softly that night, and the beam from the light of Earth stretched once again toward the forbidden sky. It was no longer a memorial. It was a conversation between those who waited and those who never stopped protecting. And somewhere in the quiet between those stars, a voice, warm and steady, seemed to whisper back through the silence, "We see you." The galaxy would never forget them again, because sometimes the greatest heroes are not the ones who speak the loudest, but the ones who remain when everyone else gives up. And the humans, they had remained forever.